I'm going to explain how to effectively study for your exams. Nobody teaches us this, but in this video I want to consolidate everything in one place on how to understand what you learn, how to memorize what you've just understood, and how to focus throughout that. I'm James, I'm a second year mechanical engineering student. My journey started when I was studying for my A-levels. I have dyslexia, which is learning difficulty, and I had to learn how to study. I used all the techniques I'm about to explain to you to get 3 A stars. And it completely changed my life because I finally realized that when you work at something consistently, you learn how to do it, you can get anything you want. And if I can do it, so can you. So I hope this video motivates you, drives you towards learning and doing well in your exams and doing it effectively. Before I go into how to understand material, I want to explain what active recall is. Active recall is when you test yourself about the information, you quiz yourself pretty much, using past paper questions, using your own flashcard. This is so important because it builds that neural connection with the material that you need to be able to understand it and memorize it, okay? First step I take to understand the material I'm trying to learn is I use pre-questions. There's been a recent study done that people who pre-question themselves on material actually retain 50% more information than people who don't. If you start asking yourself questions about it before you actually learn it, it actually builds this curiosity, this drive to understand things, and makes it more fun and enjoyable because you have more autonomy and power over the learning process, and you're not just like thinking, oh, I have to learn all this stuff, and it's not passive. You're not just watching a lecture and thinking, oh, I got stuck at the first slide, I don't know what's going on now. You're going through it in your pace. And when you do this and you go through the flashcards, it actually builds this depth of knowledge because you're asking why, how, where, and it builds this depth that you couldn't have got if you just watched the lecture slide. So how I do this is I use a software called Anki. You just go through the lecture slide, copy the title into the front of the flashcard, and then you put the information of the rest of the lecture slide on the back. This works the same for textbooks where you can just copy the title and then all the other information into the back of the flashcard. And then the good thing is you can get straight to reviewing the flashcard. If I didn't understand it, this is where the Feynman technique comes in, and this is where I put it into the extra bar of my flashcard. With Anki, I use an add-on called Edit Field During Review. It's so helpful because on the extra bar you can ask yourself questions about the material, and then those questions just paste into Google or to ChatGPT to get more context. For me, this was really helpful in my A-levels especially because when I went through the material before the lesson, asking specific questions about the specification points, it allowed me to build this curiosity and also get really stuck and really confused. And what's really good about that is when you actually turn up to the lecture or your lesson, you can make good use of it and you can ask your teacher good questions and they will understand it better than you, and then they can actually explain it to you. You're actually making better use of your time and your teacher's time if you have this innate curiosity to ask good questions. Because when you're in the class and you're getting stuck on the first slide, you can't actually ask the difficult questions that you would have wanted to when you actually go through the material the first time by yourself. This ability to understand the material before you actually are in the lesson, I found has been the most useful part of my learning process, and it's just so helpful. But this process of making a flashcard for each header and then the information in the back allows you to consolidate in everything into one place, into Anki, to then actively review it, to recall it out of your brain, to be able to get better results faster. Because if you start working early before the lesson, when you come to the lesson, you've already seen the material and that's your second review of the material, right? That allows you to make it stick quicker because we know now when you learn something for the first time, your memory of it exponentially decays, right? But when you learn it again, it will just be bumped up and then it will decay a little bit less quick. When you go back to your lesson and you're asking good questions and you're reviewing the material again, you've already got one more review than everyone else around you, you know? And when it comes to the test or the exam, you're going to have so many more reviews because you're using flashcards and Anki to review constantly, where it spaces it out for you. And you'll have this spaced repetition process with active recall and you'll be flying. You're going to be absolutely great. What I do when I review the flashcards to understand it a bit better, I told you now I use that like extra bar with the toggle, the Notion toggle, which you can get in the link in the description, and Google Drive link, all my add-ons are there, everything's there. And what I do is I just try and teach myself, okay? I think this is so important. If you have someone actually physically to listen to you, teach them, that's great. But for me, a little bear works. I literally have him on my desk and he sits on my desk, I explain it to him, and we learn a lot together. And me explaining it to him, like acting like I'm a lecturer when I'm trying to talk to him about natural frequencies and stuff like that, allows me to have this deeper understanding of the material. When you have the ability to teach other people and also teach yourself, the understanding just flows, okay? And I think really use materials like ChatGPT and YouTube to your advantage and store all of that information in one place into one flashcard as you can. You don't have to use Anki. That's what I use because it's efficient, it's effective, it was what works best for me, and I love the application because it's free. Consolidate all of this into one word is faster. So the first thing is forget what you already know. Ask good questions. When you do this, try and be in a good state. So eat something, work out before, and then teach everything you know to a toy or somebody, because that will help you learn it a lot faster. ER is environment and routine. Right, I'm going to talk about that a bit later. So another thing with understanding what you're learning is I would try and make a big picture. So when I review my flashcards, this helps with memorization and understanding. I try and make on my iPad, which is here, I use OneNote, which is like an infinite canvas where you can try and link in loads of things together. So I make this massive mind map of all the flashcards when I review it, so I can see the bigger picture and I can see where all the flashcards link together. This helps me because I find when I write things down when I review my flashcards, it sticks in my head a lot better. And actually handwriting notes is better than typing them, and there's been evidence that's shown that it helps long-term and short-term memory recall, even though it's a bit more time-consuming to write out it all. So I've compromised with this, so I make my flashcards quickly by using Anki, and then I get to active recall, and this is the part that takes so much time because I'm writing it out, I'm trying to spend a lot of time recalling it out of my head, like blurting on a piece of paper. And what's cool about this is that when you have all of the things in one place, it doesn't really matter if you make pretty notes anymore. It just matters that you're reviewing it and you're writing stuff down as quickly as possible and just trying to get it in your head. People always look at my notes and say, James, it's so messy. Why are you not like making pretty notes? Because it's not about that eco over ego. You know, the economics of it is that when I write stuff down, it will go in my head, and I just want to do it as quickly as possible because I want to get through the flashcards and make it as active as an intense like period as possible. Okay, and that allows me when I'm doing on my iPad, yes, it's saved, but in my A levels I used to just have like notebooks, and I just used to fill them up with like past paper questions and stuff like that, and then I would just chuck it out afterwards because I didn't need it anymore, because I know that I would have everything in one place in Anki and I could rely on that. What's cool about this with using Anki is with building this bigger picture, this bigger like second brain almost, is the browse feature is incredibly useful. Like nobody talks about this, but when you're doing your flashcards and it's like a keyword within the flashcard, make sure you bold it. And then when you're doing past paper questions and you go over like a natural frequency question in your past paper, you can type into browse natural frequency and that flashcard will pop up, okay? And then you can iterate over those flashcards and make them better whilst you do your past papers. You can put the mark scheme of the past paper into the flashcard, you can edit the wording of the lecture slide, and this helps you build this iterative, deep understanding of the material, because you've made the flashcards, you go on to the lecture, you start doing past papers on it, then you edit the flashcards, then you continue to review it, and then when you keep going around the material, you build this deeper understanding, and at the same time you're memorizing the understanding. So that's one thing, to build this bigger picture of all the information and not just like be so singular and not see where it's all linking in to different things. I'm going to go over how to use past papers effectively. So the first thing I like to do is I like to go through the question and try and get it right, and then I look at the answer, and I keep doing this until I get it right. Whilst I do this, I have Anki open with the browse function, and I'm looking through my existing flashcards to see if I have a specific flashcard on that past paper question. Normally I do, and I would edit that flashcard, help me understand that question when I come up against it again. Or I would just even add the past paper question into Anki, but I don't really like doing that when you have lots of questions. But at university, what I do as a mechanical engineering student, I put all my tutorial questions into Anki so that I can review them about 5 times before my main exam, because for me that's like the biggest ROI activity, because the tutorial questions are normally very similar to the exam. So that's how I like to do maths problems. And Another thing I use my iPad and OneNote to organize all my past papers in one place, so that when I'm out on the go, I have it all organized. I just open my iPad and I start reviewing the past papers instantly. And then when I've done the past paper, and if it's specifically hard, I will add it into Anki. If it's not that hard and I've got already an existing Anki card on it by using Browse, I won't add it into Anki because there's no usefulness of that past paper question. And then also, what I did for A-levels, which was really helpful, and some maths questions, is you need to ask yourself, can I do this past paper question in my head? Can I say the answer out loud? And sometimes you don't need to write it down because you've already done it before, and past paper questions repeat themselves. And that will help you save time when doing past paper questions and not repeat it and repeat it. But the great thing about this is if you have Anki open, you can synthesize all the past paper questions, hopefully, into Anki, so that eventually, when it comes to the exams, you don't have to keep doing the past papers because it's all into Anki. And the only thing you need to do now is just keep reviewing Anki before your exams. So hopefully you go through all of the past papers questions by yourself, okay? Get them all done, all right? Have Anki open, master your Anki cards, add the past paper questions that are really, really difficult. Then eventually it becomes very, very simple to study because all you have to do is review the Anki flashcards effectively and actively. But it's simple, but it's not easy. It's really, really bloody hard. But for me, that helps to make things more simple and not overcomplicate it, and have like so many tabs open, have Google open, and it makes it a lot less distracting. And that's where it will come to the end of this video, where we talk about focusing and staying focused. Now that we've gone through the flashcards and we've actually built this deeper understanding of the material and not this surface level just memorizing stuff, I'm going to go into specific memorization tools that even when you've understood it, you still can't memorize it for some reason. So the first one is mnemonics. This has been absolutely so helpful for so many different things. I have to say one thing: the more outrageous the sentences, the easier it will be to memorize it. I remember me and my friends before my GCSE physics exam, we were creating some outrageous things, but we did really well. Okay, so that's one thing that I kind of remember, is that when they are more outrageous, the easier they will be for me to remember them. Another thing is that we remember pictures much better than words, because our brains dually encode images, but only encode words only once. So what does this mean? It means that when you see an image, it's stored in the image part of your brain and also the word part of your brain. But when you see a word, it's only stored in the word part of your brain, okay? So when you're making a flashcard, you want to try and include an image in there so that when it comes to reviewing it, you can almost see this dual image and the word, right? So it's building on that understanding. Another thing with me being dyslexic, I always listen to things. So I'm not a big reader, but I'm a big listener of audiobooks. Anki is also incredible for me because it can read the front and the back of the flashcard for you by using some sort of add-on called TTS or something. In the description, as I've said before. So yeah, they're three things that have helped me specifically. There's probably a lot more that you can experiment with, like the one where you go through a house and you can have every object in the house as something you're trying to remember, and keeping this like palace in your mind. So they're the memorization tools I've used when I've struggled to memorize what I've understood. I'm now going to go into how to stay focused and be able to do this consistently for a long period of time and study and enjoy the process, really. I think this is probably the biggest part of this video, probably more important, because we all know what to do. It's just how you do it. So the first part I'm going to go over is a book called Deep Work by Carl Newport. He talks about two different types of work. Deep work, which is where you're singularly focused on one task. You're not getting distracted, and your whole concentration, your whole being is to complete that one task. Shallow work is where you're distracted. It's like emails. It's where you're getting distracted with loads of different things around you. And the main point of this is building this philosophy to be able to reflect on your process and try and build deep work. Another thing with deep work is that a lot of people miss interpret it and they think that it's a form of flow. But it's actually the opposite of flow. It's not this feeling where you're losing track of time and it's all like this fantasy of studying and then you wake up and then it's 5 o'clock. No, it's this deliberate practice where you are struggling and it's really difficult and you know where the time is going, you're wishing it to stop. That's where the active recall is coming from. That's why it's called deep work and not flow work, because it's not easy, it's deliberate practice which makes you better. I think there's a couple of things that I would like you to try to help your deep work. The first one is eliminate the things that distract you. So one thing I'm quite good at is that I'm very disciplined with my environment. I'm very disciplined with what comes into my world, and I'm very good at eliminating things out of my world that don't give me happiness. That's why I deleted social media, because it was making me anxious and unhappy, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. That's why I don't drink alcohol, because it doesn't make me feel good, doesn't align with my goals, and I'm okay with eliminating distractions, sacrificing things to help my deep work. You don't have to do that, but it's one thing I would challenge you to eliminate things that don't really make you happy. The second one is find what deep work method works for you. The one that I like the most is habitual, because I like to have a routine, do things the same time every day. So for my A-levels, when I was working from like 9 to 5, I would come home, work out, eat, then I would start work around from 6:30 till like 9, then I would go to sleep, wake up at 7, and then I'd repeat that process. Some people quite like to do it before in the morning, which I'm now like that. At university, I like to get my work done first thing in the morning, and then I can do other stuff like this in the afternoon. But I like to have a 4-hour block where I'm studying. But this is all come from my journaling method, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, where it's reflecting on the things that work and the things that don't work. Another method is journalistic type of deep work, which is really, really helpful for when you've got lectures and lessons and you have to fit the work in between those times. So say you're working from like 9 to 5 and that's your strict like cut-off limits, and you have lectures throughout the day. Go to lectures, and then in the time that you have in between it, just make that your focus bout of work. Probably going to have like 3 hours, 4 hours a day to do that, and you can get all your work done in that time. I like to do that, and I also like the habitual type of deep work. I alternate between the two. And then another thing is create a good environment for where you study. So this is my desk. I try not to do anything else but study here and make these videos. I try and keep it a sacred place where I don't play on my phone here. I don't watch distraction social media things here. I try and just keep this for studying and deep thinking. And create an environment. Like if you don't have that, if you don't have your own desk at home, go to the library. When I go back home in London from Manchester, I like to go to the library because I find it very distracting to be around my family and all the distracting things. It doesn't make me want to study. So I spend most of my time in the library when I go home. And that's quite nice as well, because that gives you a strict time that you have to go to the place and you have to come back. And that's what I do at university as well. Also the challenge of trying to build this philosophy of doing one thing at once. Stop overcomplicating things and try and be very intentional with what you're doing. I like to study in like 4-hour blocks, very long blocks, and I like to do one thing at once. The next part of this is time blocking. How I do it is on the left-hand side of the page, I make my plan for the day, right? And then on this side of the page, I see the things that I want to do. And every day I pick only 2 things I want to do for that day, okay? And for me right now is I'm just going through reviewing all of my data acquisition flashcards today. That was the main goal. And then also filming this video. Why this is really helpful for me is because I really, really struggle with procrastination and intentionality on things. And I have to track every minute of my day. And I really recommend you to do this for a period of your life. Just try and use a notebook, try and track the period that you're working and what you're not doing. And the rule with time blocking is when you've made a plan for what you're doing, do that one thing and don't get distracted. So like right now I'm in a film block. I have to be doing this. I'm not doing anything else but this, and I'm focusing all my energy on it. But obviously things come up, you have to change the plan. And this was a very dodgy day where I literally changed my plan so much. I created like so many different plans for the day. Another thing with this is it helps me not burn out. I made a video on my channel, the 7 rules I follow to stop my burnouts and study every day. And that's really helped me schedule my day the night before I go to bed, which is really important because when I wake up the next day, I'm much more alert and I know what I'm doing. I've got a mission. Is I schedule one thing for my mind, so that's normally reading or making one of these videos or something like that. I schedule one thing for my body. I normally do 2 things because I love exercise. It brings me so much happiness. It makes me a better person. And one relationship thing. So I could be with my girlfriend, organise to go to the gym with one of my friends, call my grandma. It could be as simple as that. It helps me build a more philosophy for my day and reflect on the things that work, the things that don't work. The reason why I do it on a journal instead of a Google Calendar or anything like that is because of the same study that when you write things down, it helps you retain that information better, and it also helps your short-term and long-term memory. When I do this before bed, I don't really have to look at the plan throughout the day because I've intentionally done it. I kind of know what the objectives are. I know clearly what the 2 things I want to get done for the next day. I know what time I'm doing them. I know where I'm doing them. And it makes this very clear, intentional practice. Having that intentionality practice before bed helps me be a better person and not just studying. Another thing with focusing is that I found is that I feel the best in myself. I study better. I'm much happier when I have active forms of recovery and rest. What I mean by this is not passive rest, active rest. It's the same as active recall. It's where things that are hard in the moment but make you feel better afterwards. So like me reading a really hard novel. It's hard in the moment, but I feel great when I go to sleep. Me in the morning when I go for a run, it's really hard in the moment, but right now I feel great that I went for a run in the morning. It's really hard in the moment, but it's better for you in the future. It's that like whole thing, like don't quit, suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. It's not like the whole thing. You have to obviously enjoy the process of it, but it's that process of suffering just in that micro minute to be able to live as a champion afterwards, to feel great with the work that you've put in. And I really believe in that. So with active rest, try and maybe every other day incorporate active rest and maybe not just binge watch Netflix and be on your phone and social media. Maybe be with your friends. There's a really good book called Rest. My biggest thing for me was sports, really. I love my sports, I love working out, and that's really gives me more energy to be able to study. Now I want to talk about the importance of sleep. I read this book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I really recommend it. And it really explains to me why we sleep. For a long time, I had this hypothesis that like sleep was a superpower, right? Because I play the guitar and I sometimes play before bed. And when there's a really hard piece and I can't get it, I'd go to sleep, I'd wake up and somehow I'd be able to play it. And this book actually explained that phenomenon. In your sleep, in your REM cycle specifically, your brain actually consolidates all the information you've learned throughout the day and helps you memorize it and retain it. Okay, and when that comes to exams, that's incredibly, incredibly important. So for me, I ask the question, how can I help my REM sleep? How can I help my sleep? So the first thing I do to help my sleep is I wake up at the same time every day, around 7 a.m. and I go to bed at like 10 p.m. trying to get 9 hours of sleep. And then I get outside as quickly as possible for a run or walk. And another thing is I don't have any caffeine like 8 hours before I go to bed. So I have it 1 in the morning, then I leave it. Another thing to improve your sleep is to stop drinking alcohol. I recommend to watch Andrew Huberman's podcast on what alcohol does to your body. And there's some really scary things. But the one that really scared me was it actually reduces the thickness of your brain. So that makes you a bit more thick. And I don't need that because I've already got dyslexia. And it reduces your REM cycle and it really can screw up your sleep. So the best amount, in my opinion, is 0 from the things I've read and the research I've read. Another thing is try and make like an evening routine. I like to eat 3 hours before bed because I don't like to go to sleep on a full stomach because it just doesn't make me feel good. And I try and read before bed. This is something that's really helpful for me. I just got my Kindle beside my bed and I just pull that out and I read on the really low light setting with all the lights off, and I just read until my eyes get tired and then I just pass out. It's an amazing feeling, honestly. I'm reading like some sort of novel, or I just read like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius or some sort of Stoic book. Really helps me pass out quick because it can quite get boring quickly, but it is really useful. I love stoicism, so that's what I do to help my sleep, and it's really important. I'm going to go over how to not feel stressed for your exams. I believe in stoicism, where you need to focus on the things that are inside your control and accept everything that's outside your control. So when it comes to studying, just focus all your energy on the process, on taking action every day. And when it comes to the exam, you'll be confident because you know you did everything you could to get you to that position in that moment. Another thing is rely on drive, not motivation. Okay, drive is a concept that I learned from David Goggins' book called Can't Hurt Me. It's this ability to want to drive towards your potential and finding out what your why is. Okay, it might be different for everyone else, but for me, I know I want to reach my potential, my physical and my mental, and there has to be sacrifices to get there. And I know if I just focus all my energy on trying to reflect on the process, trying to deepen my focus, trying to build that ability to really singular focus on one thing and get things done quickly, I know that's all I can do. That's all that's in my control, and I will accept everything else that happens. That's the end of this video, guys. I hope this has helped you in some way, and if it has, please give a like and subscribe, comment with any questions that you have, and thank you very much for watching. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your week, and goodbye. Peace.